We'd like to think that we know all there is to know about women and men. But do we though? Here are the 15 differences between men and women that will change your life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Away. If you've ever wanted to know about game changing secrets between female and male relationships, then this video is for you. We're going to reveal things and drop info that not many people talk about. Before that, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to receive updates and new videos for this channel. Number 1. Men are seduced by visuals. Women are prone to words. In the best-selling book, The Art of Seduction, Robert Greene argues that when it comes to women and men, there are two types to look out for. When it comes to men, women play the role of a siren. Men tend to get affected by a woman's use of visual body structure, physical gestures, and all-around playfulness. This kind of attraction to a beautiful body is a very old evolutionary process, often very primal. On the other hand, for women, men play the role of a rake. Women tend to get affected by a man's use of language, specifically the kind that reminds women of a man's vulnerability. This use of language is attractive because it is often different from what men normally show: brute strength or cold logic. Number 2. Women burn more fat during exercise than men do. Many studies point to the fact that women are more prone to body image issues compared to men. Interestingly enough, newer studies in metabolism show that women are burning more fat than previously thought. The kicker is that this fat burning only happens during exercise and stops almost immediately after. The reasoning behind this is stored fat is a surplus of usable energy. Both men and women can access this. But women tend to bring most of that fat out only during bouts of physical exertion and keep the fat stored for later. A big part has to do with women's role as gatherers in our evolutionary past, where they have to procure foodstuffs and take care of children. To many women who struggle with losing the flab before summer or the holiday season, this is quite a bummer. Number 3. Men burn more fat after exercise than women do. Most men would agree that they would like to get in shape with the least amount of work. As it turns out, many strength and conditioning specialists have pointed out the case. Men burn more fat even after bouts of exercise. Carbohydrates are usually burned first, then stored fat, except on occasions like fasting. Men are particularly good at using stored carbohydrates in the muscles and burning fat as a result. Their bodies become more like energy guzzlers, burning extra fat for up to 72 hours after heavy exercise bouts. As the body stabilizes, their metabolism goes back to normal until the next exercise session. Number 4. Women don't directly tell what they want. Though women will not necessarily avoid confrontation, they are more likely to zigzag around it. For men, however, this is almost like a game of cat and mouse that can create confusion and misunderstanding. If a woman were to get curious about the new waffle shop across your block and ask you if it's interesting, what it usually means is that she wants to go there. But emerging psychological research points out that this is not always a bad thing. Women appeal to indirect intentions because they want or are driven to open up communication lines and understanding one another. Going straight to the facts is not the only aspect which makes communication a wonderful thing. Number 5. Men act based on matters of fact. Using reason and appealing to facts is good and helpful. There is often a downside to this too. Cognitive science is showing that many people hold things like cognitive biases. One of the main features of this kind of biased judgment is based on the evidence we have of something. And more so than women, men tend to get evidence to properly judge something. The main problem is that it is hard to keep evidence from our emotions, and therefore creating a bias. Women, on the other hand, rely more on matters of intuition. Number 6. Women's aesthetic standard of men are different. Many men believe that women want them to possess a set of perfectly sculpted, rock-hard, fresh-of-the-oven abdominals. But studies about preferences refer to women wanting something different. The V-taper. A V-taper is a set of ideal body proportions set in this order with some hefty descriptions. Big muscular shoulders, a small chest, lean abdominals, not necessarily ripped, and a well-defined set of legs, all held by a chiseled back and backside. Number 7. Men's aesthetic standard of women are different too. In contrast to many women commercials today, many men don't want the kinds shown over certain magazines. For many years, women had to contend with the images of rather thin-looking models to appeal to the opposite sex. Turns out, men aren't into that sort of thing, at least based on studies of feminine body shapes that men liked. And although the inverted triangle or athletic girl body type ranked high, it was not at the top. Men prefer the proportions of the hourglass, which is often a difficult thing for women to produce. Number 8. Women share their problems with others. Many people make comments on why women talk a lot. And they do, but for reasons you might not expect. Neurobrain imaging research points out some key differences between men and women's brain waves. When men have a major problem or breakdown, parts of their brain shut down and they go off into a corner to zone out. When women have the same problem, it turns out that there are parts of their brains that are more active, even at rest. This indicates that when women talk about their issues, you can make a case that is a way for them to problem solve. Number 9. Men solve a problem through brooding. Though the act of brooding is not a feature in all men, it presents itself as a common tendency based on different neuroimaging studies. Men in particular have an affinity to perform in what psychologists refer to as flow states. They are states of deep focus when performing a particular task to a sufficient level. Supposedly, it is present in both high-stake performances like basketball or through an engineer's deep focus in solving complex problems. Brooding is not high stakes, but it is a deep focus. Women prefer flow states too, of course, via communication with people. Number 10. Women live longer than men on average. There are many reasons why women produce a longevity record in many countries. And while you can't pin it down to a genetic gift, there is some evidence of something simpler. For one thing, women have a built-in biological function known as menstruation. The process of menstruation eliminates not only blood but also iron. Iron is a key mineral in the human body, but in excess, it creates some problems in the body, particularly to the blood. And in this aspect, women hold an arguable advantage over men. Men don't menstruate. 11. Men are more athletic than women on average. Both men and women can do sports. No argument there. Men, however, have a distinct biological difference over women in the form of muscle mass and athleticism. Kinesiology research points to a man's general capacity to produce a great degree of muscle fiber activation upon exertion. Although there are many reasons for greater muscle mass in men, the reasoning holds to the evolutionary tradition of sprinting, lifting, and hunting. In terms of an athlete's ability to explode in different planes of motion, men seems to have greater muscular coordination as well. This increase in coordination, scientists posit, is due to the presence of a longer ring finger, strangely enough. Number 12. Women can tolerate more physical pain. Whether it is a biological birthright or a predisposition from evolution, women in the gym can take more reps, much more. Some studies based on gym activities point to women often outworking their male counterparts, at least in terms of rest. Lactate threshold is a term given to the capacity of the body to maintain composure despite the flood of lactic acid during exertion. Lactic acid, of course, is that burning sensation you have when you go through a long marathon or a long workout. Part of the reason for this tolerance is that it prepares women for childbirth, but it's still speculation. 13. Women treat cooking as relaxing and distressing. Of course, cooking is dependent on many factors, but women seem to keep their pace in the kitchen. An interesting behavioral analysis conducted in high-performance kitchens, female chefs were less prone to straying away from a plan or recipe. Male chefs, on the other hand, had a particular need for not only control, but also a desire to explore more experimental dishes or menus. It is debatable whether this is because of the traditional role or stigma that women have had across centuries. There is probably a good reason why most of the favorite male chefs in the world always look to their mother or grandmother for advice. 14. Men like barbecues and make a show out of it. Michael Pollan, in his book Cooked, notes one particular story that was particularly male: the barbecue. In contrast to women, who prefer the domestic simplicity of the crock pot or a slow cooking stew recipe, men go out and do a grill. Interestingly enough, Paula notes that the barbecue itself is not all that hard, but men always make it this big, heroic endeavor. This is supported by many observations that women don't go out of their space and grill meat outside. They'd rather do gardening. Paula theorizes that the male fascination with barbecue harkens back to meat sacrifices in the ancient world, whether Greek or biblical or some other tradition. 15. Men and women do have different worldviews. Is the difference between women and men that cut and dry? Science seems to agree so, with some caveats. For example, in a university study done, some meta-studies showcased male-female responses to certain issues around happiness. In the study, men were more prone to deal with the issue of happiness, success, and failure with either pride or contempt. Women dealt with the same issues but responded with warmth or fear. What are some explanations of this? Social systems seem to play a role here. Men are taught to occupy a protector role in society, which is no surprise why several brain imaging studies highlight similarities in hunter gatherer patterns. Women are taught to occupy as a caregiver figure for the family, and this is why much of the brain images showcase an active prefrontal cortex similar to people who worry a lot. As they say, women live in Venus and men live in Mars. Hey guys, we just did the 15 differences in men and women. Most importantly, what's your opinion? Do you agree with these facts? And what pieces of information here are you going to apply to your relationships? Make sure to drop by the comment section and type in those responses.